Hi, welcome to the podcast, Bully.
Thanks for having me.
For anyone who doesn't know you and to introduce you to the audience, who do you say you are?
I am a boxer, trainer. I'm a bartender for events as well. And ultimately, currently, my goal these days is to be a certified tattoo artist. Currently, I am a tattoo apprentice at Two Groupie Studios in Plano.
Hmm. Man, so you're you've got a good round robin of or maybe a gambit might be a better word of your talents and traits that you're tapping into there.
Yeah, when I was 18, I had to learn the world for myself and really learn what I'm capable of.
Hmm.
I think it took a good amount of my time, but ultimately in the end, I had the wrong circumstances and I was around the wrong people.
Hmm.
So I left that, and ultimately it took my ex leaving me for me to say like, okay, I need things to change. I need things to get better,
Hmm.
and I just started grinding, and then before you know it, like all the things that I told her that I was going to do when my boxing career was over.
Hmm.
I just said, I need to put my foot on the gas and get to it right now.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. And within a year now, uh, I've accomplished being a bartender for a company called OVG.
Hmm.
We just had the state fair and amongst other events as well.
Hmm.
And I've been practicing at home, doing tattoos like as much as I can.
Hmm.
And before you know it, I met different people that had different connections, and I was able to get my foot through the door and get in at an apprenticeship.
Awesome. How did you grow up? Like how did you come up with some of these ideas? Like what made you want to get into boxing?
Uh, Growing up, I was always a tall, scrawny kid.
Hmm.
I was very nerdy. I wasn't really into like other things that most black kids would be into. I like watching cartoons. I was one of those kids that would like bring a deck of Yu-Gi-Oh cards to school and play with my friends, and we would get beat up for that. So I learned at a young age to start fighting back, and then it became a habit.
Hmm.
Um, I really don't like fighting. I never really liked hurting people,
Hmm.
but boxing it taught me how to channel that aggression
Hmm.
in a more productive manner.
Hmm.
And since my goal was because when I first started out boxing, I did not want to be a competitor.
Hmm.
Um, I just wanted to know how to defend myself.
Hmm.
But best way to get better at boxing is to compete.
Hmm.
That's what I did. And before you know it, after so many black eyes and bloody noses, I was pretty good at it.
Hmm.
And it just became this thing where like it was this merry-go-round. Like, people see me perform, I might get a sponsorship or might get a job offer somewhere,
Hmm.
and I just kept on going with it.
Hmm. How early did you start it? Like you mentioned, when you're younger, people were picking on you, and you found a way to first practice self-defense.
Oh, I didn't get into boxing until I was 20 years old. So that's another reason
Hmm.
why I want to be competitive. Because you got people from age 5, 6 years old and still competing to this day. So it was intimidating.
Hmm.
But I learned boxing is not about who's the angriest or what hood you came from and stuff that. It's
Hmm.
about being a more intelligent man in there.
Hmm. So then,
If I can out, hmm?
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, if I can outthink my opponent, if I can outsmart my opponent, and I
Hmm.
know what punch they're gonna throw before they throw it, and I can disengage it, I can
Yeah.
beat my opponent.
Hmm. Are you familiar with the anime series Naruto?
Yes, very.
Did you ever watch any of the maybe it'd be some of the filler content with like Rock Lee and his guy sensei?
Not too many episodes. A lot of fillers I skipped them because to
Gotcha.
me they was off storyline, and I wanted to
Right.
see the action.
Right. But there's just one episode in there that kind of stuck out to me where it was like specifically focused on like taijutsu hand-to-hand combat. And one of the things that he talked about is like, okay, there are only so many combinations someone can throw. So if they throw this combination, you have to parry with you have to follow with this. But then if you want to change the way the fight's going, you've got to at some point dictate what it is that you how you want to anticipate the fight going. I just thought that was kind of like a good callback. Like you said, like if you
Right.
know what they're throwing or if you know how you want to lead the dance, you basically set the tone and say, okay, this is how we're going to have this exchange. That's pretty intelligent.
100%.
So then what like you mentioned the intimidation factor and not starting boxing until you were in your 20s. Like what did you do in the meantime? Like how did you get through those tough times, the bullying and different things like that, like the whooping, so to speak?
Um, I didn't fare too well. I got into a lot of trouble. I had charges pressed on me at different times, and I was supposed to be sentenced at 14
Mm,
for malicious wounding.
mm,
And the only reason why I didn't get sentenced is because my prosecutor didn't show up. So
mm,
the judge was, hey, if I see you again, you're getting an automatic 5 years on top of whatever the charge is. I'm
mm,
gonna expunge your record. Do you understand me? I went from being ready to like, because it was gonna be a lengthy sentence. I think I was gonna do like about at a minimum 5 years. And I was 14 years old, so I was gonna do what, like 2 years in an adult prison.
wow.
So my mentality was like, okay, I gotta be tough, I gotta be hard, I ain't gonna cry, this and other. I went
Mm,
from, being ready to flip off the court to saying, yes, sir, you will not see me again.
mm,
And I think I did pretty good at keeping my promise. And I just stayed busy. I got into like I started drawing more. I did sports. I did wrestling for
mm,
a good period of time. I did anything to really just keep myself out of trouble and just to stay busy.
mm. Okay. So then I guess did you do wrestling in high school or like how did you choose that?
It was on and off in middle school and high school. I wasn't too consistent with middle school because I was always fighting in the streets and stuff. So,
Mm,
you know, when I got the opportunity in high school to do it again, and everybody saw like how good I was, and I immediately got on the varsity team. I didn't have to do JV or anything like that,
mhm.
and just kept on going with it.
Got you. So I think I maybe misunderstood earlier. So it's like in getting picked on, you still had to defend yourself. It's not like you're just gonna lay down and take it, so to speak.
Yeah, because when you're young, there's always that idea of like, okay, I gotta beat somebody very badly to know let everybody else know not to
Mm.
mess with me. Like you gotta be the
Right.
baddest kid in the playground. Um, there, unfortunately, I feel like when you're young, that is just the most unfortunate time of your life because there's nothing really you can do when you're young. Like
Mm.
sometimes unfortunate circumstances are just or it's just that unfortunate circumstances.
Right.
And I
Right.
think as adults, we all process those traumas and look back at where we are and try to do our best to like okay, I think we look back at where we used to be and
Mhm.
try to best in our present moment and be better than where we were.
Got you. Did did you feel like wrestling provided you any outlet to get some of that aggression out since it's like close quarters combat hand to hand?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I went against guys that were bigger than me. Sometimes my coach would put me up against like guys that were two weight classes bigger than me. I remember my first year, my varsity year, I went against some dudes that were just jacked. They were ripped up. They were
Mhm.
super intimidating. And a couple of those guys I beat within the first round. Just put them on their back, pinned them. It was over.
Mhm.
One guy, I put him in this move called a banana split. Banana split is my
Yeah.
favorite move. It's when you flip the guy upside down, you stretch their legs out, you make them, you force them to do a split.
Yeah.
Uh, I made one guy scream and tap out on that one. That felt great.
Mhm.
But I'm sorry, what was your question again?
No, I was just asking about like being able to do wrestling because for me, I was introduced to wrestling in sixth grade, and it was one of those things where it's like you can't really play basketball, and people kind of assume, oh, you're tall, scrawny, you should play basketball. But then it's like, oh, you get to do this wrestling thing. It's a participatory sport where you engage with other people. It might be uncomfortable at first, where it's like, okay, you got to do what, and it's like you're basically face to face with someone, and it's like somebody's got to quit or give up at some point. So you either win on points or you win by pinning, and it's either you win or you learn throughout the process. So I was curious, like being able to get out from being picked on in the streets and then starting wrestling, where it's like you're forced to like learn moves to deal with the aggression and things like that, and actually being able to practice, get that repetition, and then seeing that, oh, I'm good at this thing. Like, what did that do for you for like gaining respect or just feeling better about like being able to handle yourself?
It made me very motivated. Like, and I stayed out of trouble because I was always, just always at practice. And then even when there wasn't practice, I was doing the wrestling camps
Hmm.
because it was just something to do. And I feel like I got better. I got a lot better off of doing those wrestling camps because I got to wrestle with different college athletes
Hmm.
and different kids that were like went to states or nationals.
Wow,
So that was a pretty awesome experience.
that's awesome.
And I think as you see yourself get better, and I guess the more my body transformed, and I went from being that scrawny kid to like scrawny, but I had some muscle on me. Like people like,
Right, right.
hey, like people went from looking at me like, oh, you're skinny to like, hey, you kind of slim, but you got some muscle on you. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, don't try it over here.
It's a little more functional now, like you know how to move somebody.
Right.
That's
And
what's up.
definitely just ankle picks were my favorite moves.
Mm,
Because nobody never saw them moves coming.
right.
Like there
Ankle
was
pick to
one
a single
time.
leg.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Or an ankle pick to and like I don't know how, but some way somehow like I would do an ankle pick and get behind them and immediately go into that banana split.
Mm,
But
yeah.
that's like years later when I got better, and it's just like my processing got a lot faster as well. The more I practiced, the harder I worked,
Hmm.
um, the more everything just flowed together.
Gotcha. So then, at, um, how did you go then from wrestling to boxing instead of like maybe go towards martial arts or mixed martial arts like a lot of wrestlers kind of do?
I did think about MMA and stuff,
Hmm.
but I had more of a passion for boxing because the fight always starts, even in a street fight,
Hmm.
it always starts with hands up.
Right.
So, and I studied different martial artists starting out, especially Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali. But
Mm,
Bruce Lee, Jeet Kune Do from Muhammad Ali.
mm,
Like if you look back at the way his stance is and everything, like he's bouncing, he's up and down on his toes, he's staying pretty long, he's whipping out his jab or he's whipping out those kicks.
yeah.
Ali was a big inspiration for Bruce Lee.
Mm, wow.
So I was like, okay, I need to get better at, throwing my hands. And then as I learned the importance of boxing, I
Hmm.
also learned boxing. I learned that boxers, we're the hardest hitting martial artists. Because in
Hmm.
most martial arts, they punch stationary. Versus
Hmm.
in boxing, we move our entire body weight forward.
Gotcha.
So a stationary punch, you might be throwing maybe 40 at most, maybe 50% of your body weight.
Hmm.
Versus if you step through with both feet on a jab, you
Hmm.
got a whole like I'm 150 pounds. So you got like a whole 150 pounds of pressure coming at a person. I
Mm,
think that would hurt a lot more than 75.
gotcha. Do you have a stand you could maybe put your phone down on or something you could rest it against? Just that way you don't have to hold it up the whole time. That'll
All right,
work.
is this good?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Gotcha. And you're still in frame. But
awesome.
um that's pretty yeah, that is pretty interesting. So then once you started getting into boxing, was it like all boxing or now I feel like I'm making you stand at attention.
Uh,
You're good. But once you got into boxing, was it just like all boxing, or did you like dabble kind of back and forth? Because like sometimes people like the whole thing with mixed martial arts is like that. Um, if you pin two different styles against each other, who wins? And a lot of times people would say maybe like the wrestler or the grappler would win because like once someone can kind of slip the punches and grab a hold of them, if you can't defend someone grabbing you, then that's it. They just take you down, beat you up if they know how to punch.
I did dabble into like other forms of martial arts like Sanda.
Hmm.
Chung Lee, he was a master at Sanda. He
Hmm.
fought in the UFC as well. And then Muay Thai, which is kind of like Sanda, but Sanda is more like body slams and throws.
Hmm.
Um, Muay Thai is more strikes. They do have throws in there as well, but they're not as heavily emphasized.
Hmm.
Um, I tried to learn jujitsu, but for the most part, like when I became a sponsored athlete and I was traveling the country fighting from state to state,
Hmm.
like I dabbled less into those because
Hmm.
the more you learn something else, the more it takes away from your craft.
Hmm. Right, right.
So at the time, as a competitor, um, everything to me was nothing was more important than being a boxer.
Hmm. And how long did, like you mentioned, the thing that kind of pushed you in that direction was girlfriend breaking up with you. It was like, okay, I gotta lock in. Like, how long have you been into boxing? Like, from the time that you started to doing it professionally to now being an instructor in it?
Uh, I, I I still, like I said, I still train people in boxing. As far as being a competitor,
Hmm.
I was on and off for about 10 years.
Hmm.
I was never really consistent with it because it was always like, just dealing with life, like, finding a job to pay rent.
Hmm.
One big thing that discouraged me from like going pro too early
Hmm.
was I was side for Pritchard Cologne versus Terrell Tiger Williams.
Hmm.
And I was there when I saw Pritchard Cologne unable to come out the corner for the championship rounds. It
Hmm.
was a pretty big fight. Both guys were hitting each other illegally,
Hmm.
and that fight honestly was like the fifth fight I saw that year where somebody either died or went brain dead.
Ooh.
And I was like, crap, I don't want to live my life like this, just fight to fight from paycheck to paycheck. You
Hmm.
know, my rent depends on the next fight.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, hats off to both those guys, the Warriors. Pritchard, unfortunately, like I said, he suffered a brain injury, so he's never really going to be the same.
Hmm.
Um, I do admire that he has a loving and caring family that's helping him out and looking after him.
Hmm.
Um, but that's one of the big things that made me say, like, okay, let me try moving to Texas where there's more job opportunities and stuff
Hmm.
and see what else I can make for myself. Because uh, before I moved to Texas, I was going through the same things. Like, I looked up like what happens before boxers like, either die or have that brain injury. And
Hmm.
a lot of times those headaches and training. And
Hmm.
I had so many headaches myself personally where I wasn't even sure if I was gonna wake up the next day.
Hmm.
So um, when that fight happened, Pritchard he wasn't coming out for the championship rounds, and it was on to the main fight, which was Lamont Peterson versus Diaz. It was still a good night and everything, and then
Hmm.
Terrell Williams he was training at my gym for that fight. So later everybody's hanging out and stuff, and then we were let we were let known that
Hmm.
Pritchard was in the hospital. He started out with him saying like, "Hey, I'm feeling dizzy," to like he was throwing up, and then he passed out and he wasn't waking up.
Hmm.
So it was a couple of weeks before we even found out that that he was cognitive again. But unfortunately, we got the news that he had a brain injury as well. So
Right. Wow.
I mean, we were happy that he was alive, but that was still a very traumatic thing to witness for me, at
Hmm.
least.
Gotcha. So before then, were you going into it with the smart the like boxing being a thinking's man approach, or were you like looking to get into wars or just kind of going with whatever you could get?
Oh, I was definitely not in the smart man mentality. I was more like, war, like gotta hurt somebody. I definitely had the wrong mindset. My heart and my spirit was definitely in the wrong place for me being a competitor.
Hmm.
And I feel like in this life, the karma that you give is the karma that you get back.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily, if I were to compete again, it wouldn't be my
Hmm.
goal to like, seriously hurt or injure somebody. I
Hmm.
would definitely want to stop them with a body shot or so. And if
Yeah,
that recovery returns to me, I think I could live with that.
right. I guess that what's your take then on like someone like Floyd Mayweather, where I guess maybe people have different or mixed opinions on him, where it's like at first he was one way, but then once he looked into more being a defensive boxer and making sure it's like you get in, you get out, you make the money, you make sure that you have a longevity of a career and you're not necessarily there just to entertain people necessarily. Like sometimes with fighting, there's this gladiator approach where as like fans or the masses, you watch from the outside and you're just like, make him bleed. And people just go crazy for that. But then like nobody thinks about, hey, these guys have been suffering concussions in practice or what happens to the fighters after the fact. Like everybody feels like they're on your team when you're winning, but when you lose, like people quickly forget. Like now they've got fights every weekend. I think UFC has fights this weekend, almost every other weekend, pay-per-views every month. And it's like so long as you're on top, like people are tugging at your coattails and everything like that. But after a while, they're just like, oh yeah, that guy used to fight 10, 15 years ago. And now having this issue, that issue. It's like, is it, does it feel like, is the love that you have for boxing the same now as it was back then?
Oh, I will still love and appreciate boxing for everything it's done for me. It gave me
Hmm.
confidence. It boosts my self-esteem. I'm such a magnificent fighter that
Hmm.
I try at all costs to avoid conflicts, whether it's in the street or even working in the service industry at the bar or clubs. Like I tell people like, hey, can I buy you a drink at least?
Hmm.
Um, and I'm just like such in a good mood that it just most of the time it disengages people.
Hmm. What, when would you say you adopted that mentality or that practice?
I probably didn't adopt it till maybe I was like about 24, 25.
Hmm.
At 24, I was working as a bouncer at different clubs and bars,
Hmm.
and there was a few instances where I had to defend myself,
Hmm.
and no street fight I ever had went more than two punches.
Hmm.
There were a few times where I was scared that the guys weren't going to get back up, and I was like, okay, I'm about to catch a whole case. Oh man, god dang it. And
Hmm.
like, fortunately the guys would wait back up, and I'll be like, hey, are you okay?
Hmm.
Let's not do that again.
Right.
I never threw the first punch because I'm a security. I would have lost my job,
Hmm.
but I've learned to like do the first fight I got into. Um, this guy was real drunk. He was a huge dude,
Hmm.
former football player. Don't remember what his name was.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't even think I could hurt him.
Hmm.
Um, but there was a backpack on the floor. I was telling him like, "Hey, you gotta leave," because he was making different women uncomfortable at the bar and stuff like that,
Hmm.
being too aggressive. And as he's leaving, I see this backpack on the floor and I grab it. And he's like, "Hey, get your goddamn hands off my backpack." I said,
Hmm.
"Oh," and before I could say sorry, he snuck me, and then I hit him back with a two piece, and he
Hmm.
went flying across the bar. The second punch that I threw hit him in the throat. I
Ooh.
was really aiming for his chin.
Yeah.
I think I was aiming for his chin,
Hmm.
but the throat will take it.
Yeah.
He went flying across the bar. It took him a little minute to get back up, and then once he did catch his breath and he looked at me, he was like, "I know that did not just happen." He got back up and he put his hands up. I put my hands back up with him, and then like it was different. Majority of the bar was keeping me away from him, and it was just asking him to leave.
Right, right.
I did see him like a week later, and I was like, "Hey, you can't be here. You got to go."
Hmm.
But I didn't have that same intimidation, like, "Oh, he's a huge guy." I was more like, "Okay, before we have a round two of what
Hmm.
happened last time I saw you, you gonna bounce, bro."
Yeah. That's
But
what's
it's
up.
different. It's different instances like those where I'm like, okay, I cannot put my hands on people
Hmm.
because I don't know how I don't know exactly how to measure the force of the strike I'm gonna hit them with
Hmm.
to just gauge them.
Right,
So I
right.
rather take that risk at all, and I rather just calmly like keep them at an arm's distance,
Hmm.
ask them to leave. If they anytime they smack this arm or push this arm out,
Hmm.
then we can go.
Right,
So
right.
there have been a number of times where like they'll hit my arm and I'm up here in my stance and they'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Right,
And
right.
I'm like, yeah, it gets real over here.
Yeah. That's a good point
Um,
because, oh, my bad, go ahead.
oh no, no, I'm
I was
done.
just gonna say that's a good point because I guess a lot of fight like it's almost like you prepare yourself for a fight that you may never have to make because it's like there's so much more consequences that come at the back end of it because you could be defending yourself, you could be doing your job, but then someone would get it in their head like, oh, I'm gonna sue this person or I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And it's like, okay, they could have been the instigator, they could have been just doing what people do. And just because they didn't like the outcome, didn't like the circumstance, it's like, you made me look bad. So now I've got to get my get back. And it's like, it's not the mature thing, but people will people.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, Also about that, like being sued and stuff like that, it's not really a big concern that I have
Mhm,
because one, like I'm not the most intimidating guy that when people see me, I'm tall, I'm still slim. I
mhm,
might have a little muscle to me. I'm tatted up, but
mhm.
I'm not nobody's worst nightmare. I'm not all like jacked up like with the what they call it, the camel shoulders or whatever, or something like that, the cobra shoulders.
Yeah.
Um, so most people overlook me and underestimate me. And also, there's not one big thing that kills me is like when people say my hands are registered. All right, there
Mhm,
is no police database with a list of guys that can fight in their computers. So
mhm.
when people are registered, when people say, "Oh, I'm registered," I'm just like, "What does that mean?"
I did see something maybe a few years back where it's I think it's a sponsor. I don't know if it's a gimmick or something, but they're like, "Hey, we'll give you this contract for registered hands." And it's like you could be either people were registering people as lords and ladies if they wanted to do a charity thing to have them plant trees in a certain country, and then on another hand, they're like, "Oh, hey, we can register your lethal hands," kind of like as a gimmick thing.
Yeah, like if the police type my name in their computer, it's just gonna show that I'm a 6 foot tall black male of and I currently live in Dallas, Texas. It's not gonna say like, oh, he's a boxer.
Good point. So then,
So
with go ahead.
yeah, so if I beat somebody up and like they want to press charges on me, and lots of times it'd be like bigger meathead dudes,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, okay, you just admitting to getting beat up by somebody literally half your size, and you crying like a baby.
Right.
Most men, if they have any self respect or pride left, they don't
Mhm.
want to do that.
Right, right, right. Because it's like you already look bad, and now you're gonna make how you look bad more public.
And me, I'm just gonna say I took some Taekwondo lessons.
Mhm. So then, how'd you get into? So you had boxing that brought you from Virginia to Texas, and then from there, how did you tap into your other talents like tattooing, drawing, and all the other things that you've gotten into?
Um, So I'm a personal trainer as well. Personal
Mhm,
training is not a consistent business. Like,
mhm,
at the beginning of the year, things are pretty good because you got New Year's resolution.
mhm.
Um, and that's like the biggest time when people are like trying to like get to the gym. You might see them for a couple weeks, then you never see them again.
Right.
And then it goes all the way up to about July. I think July for businesses everywhere, July is a pretty bad month.
Mhm,
Um, and then, after that, you got back to school.
mhm,
And then later on, you got the holidays coming up.
mhm,
So when being a trainer, you're probably good from January to June.
mhm,
So with me already recognize that from my experience from living in Virginia,
mhm,
I said, okay, I need to look into doing something else. So that's how I got into the service industry. I started out as a bouncer,
mhm,
and then I worked my way into being a bartender just
mhm,
for the happy hour shift.
mhm,
And I consistently got better and did more.
mhm,
And the more income that it brought me, the more I said, like, okay, I have more time on my hands, but I'm not happy with where I'm at. Like,
mhm,
I don't see myself, being in my 50s and 60s still serving up drinks and like giving it to a bunch of college kids.
mhm.
I'm like, I'm be old. Like, it's like, what you doing here, Grandpa? So I can only imagine myself like so many years ahead, still with a young crowd. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy.
Mhm,
So I said, okay, let me dabble into tattoos because I've always been able to draw. Even
mhm,
when I started drawing when I was in in middle school, I learned on my own because in public schools they really don't teach you anything. Public schools, I they, yeah, I didn't learn nothing about art in art classes. They might have talked about like the history of art, but they never really taught you anything to where you can make a career out of it.
Mm,
So like I said, I just learned off the internet on my own at 13 years old how to draw.
mm,
And I figured later, when I became an adult and I had more time on my hands from being in the service industry, I was like, okay, I need to find something else to do and something I could be happy and proud of myself for doing.
mm,
And that was art. Because anytime I do a picture, I did there's just this sense of self-fulfillment that I get from
mm.
doing a good job. And it's kind of like boxing, but like I said, boxing is not even a career that I could do forever as well.
Right.
And the rewards are high, but so are the risks as well.
Mm,
Versus being an artist, the rewards are high
mm,
and there's really no risk.
mm. So I guess how easily did being an artist, being able to draw translate into like being a tattoo artist?
I'm not gonna say that's easy.
Mm,
It's definitely a lot of work. It's just like boxing. It's hard work and consistency every day. Like
mm,
at first I thought it was something I could do as a hobby.
mm,
But now that I'm older and I have more free time and I'm less devoted to being a fighter,
mm,
I'm more devoted to being a certified tattoo artist because it's more of a stable lifestyle and it's very rewarding.
mm. I guess what type of people have you run into like getting into tattoos? Like, do you
Oh,
see a
I
lot of
met
first timers, like a lot of seasoned people?
I met all kinds of people, seasoned people, first timers. You got your I want to say you got your gangsters, you got your nerds.
Mm,
You even got there's this one young lady. Her name is Kay. Her Instagram is Ink by Royalty.
mm,
She's a phenomenal artist. She's very heavy into her beliefs. Because she's a Christian and everything, and
mm.
she's super up. So she's one of those people that you'll see in church and you'll be like, "What is she doing here?" Probably.
That's what's up. Did you have a chance to learn from her, or how have you, like in the same way that you learned from YouTube tattooing, like is it something that you do onto yourself, or do you have to train under someone in order to become like professionally licensed?
It's always best to train under somebody because that way, like you're learning from somebody. It's kind of like Star Wars. All right, you got your Jedi Master and you got your Padawan. So when
Mm,
you're an apprentice, you're the Padawan. You're learning from the Jedi Master. So
right.
that way you can take on the mantle and be your own Jedi Master.
Mm,
So right now I'm learning under the owner of the shop, Shaggy.
mm,
Uh, his style is realism. He's his work is phenomenal. It's
mm,
just insane. But I've been taking like yesterday, I learned different tips from him on
mm,
opaque shading, which
mm,
is like just shades of gray, but
mm,
in different tones and different definitions. And
mm,
at first, I was nervous about it because I'm like, okay, I got this guy watching me. He's the owner. I got everybody else watching me too.
mm,
When you got eyes on you, and whatnot, it's kind of like being at a ring. You're like, okay, it's time to dance. But I'm like, oh, you know what? We're on fake skin.
mm,
If I make a mistake, that's okay.
mm,
I had to get out my own head and then tell myself to relax and just do my work.
right.
And the more I kept on working and like the different tips that I got from different artists, like Miguel. Miguel was a he's an artist there as well.
Mm,
And he sat with me for about a good 10, 20 minutes just to show me how to like pack in my shading.
mm,
And it helped a lot. It definitely helps a lot having people with that experience to show you to be hands on and
mm.
show you like what you're doing wrong and how you can be better. And just
Gotcha.
like boxing, like
Right.
I have never met anybody that YouTube boxing lessons and was able to fight on their own. It's
Right.
just not going to happen. You need a coach.
Yeah, unless you get a few lucky punches in.
Yeah, but you're only going to last like that so far. I know they got different like underground boxing circuits and whatnot where it's
Mm,
like it's not a professional level. No,
mm.
hats off to the guys, but it looks sometimes it looks like two girls slap boxing each other for gloves on.
I think it's what's that place out of Washington? Street Beefs. I've seen that a couple of times. It's like they've got a mix of boxing, some mixed martial arts fights in there and different things. And it's like some people come prepared, like they've been training, and other people they're like, we're just gonna sling it out. And it's like, okay, you better leave it here. Don't be taking this out to the street. Don't be doing nothing like that. So it's like I think it works in Washington because they're what do they call it? Like a combat state or mutual combat state. So it's like if two people agree to fight, they leave it there and they move on.
Right. I don't disagree with that. It's entertaining. Some of the videos are funny. It's still a pretty dangerous thing, but like I think on the bright side, like
Hmm.
I don't think it's as dangerous because when you're doing things on a professional level, you
Hmm.
have to work through those camps with those headaches and everything, or with those injuries,
Right.
versus like something like a street beef. Like as soon as you feel a headache, you're like, oh no, I'm out. I'm taking these
Right,
gloves
right,
off. I'm done.
right. And I
You
think
can't do
they
that at the pressure level,
they're like, no, come back here. We're not done yet.
right?
But with that one, I think they do a good job of like stopping things whenever someone gets cut because they're like, hey, we're not able to do medicals. So if somebody has something, it's like we can't be liable for things like that. But I was curious earlier when you mentioned tattooing, what is fake skin? Is it like a texture or something? You bringing me a pellet?
Yeah.
I was just kidding.
So face skin is just like I say, it's face skin. It's like a material plastic,
Mm,
and the goal when working on face skin
mm,
is um, to work on it as if you're working on a human being.
mm,
So what you don't want to do is you don't want to scar
mm,
the surface layer.
mm,
Uh, I'm not sure if you can really tell, but like there's no scars or scratches in my designs,
mm,
and it doesn't bleed through the back either. So
mm,
that's a good sign. So that means if I'm working on somebody, uh, I'll be able to work on to a point where I know how far to go with that needle without
mm,
tearing up their skin or causing any type of serious damage or scarring.
mm. I like that. And I guess how long do you have to practice on that before like you're comfortable enough to or you're allowed to tattoo someone?
Honestly, it all depends on you as an individual.
Mm,
I would say that it's always best to like work on face scan first, and then we work on to like an actual human being,
mm,
do a small design first. And
mm.
as you get more comfortable doing small designs, then branch out to the bigger designs. Because
Gotcha.
one big uh, mistake that I think a lot of artists starting out do is they say, "Oh, I could draw this well, so if
Mm,
I tat on this person, I could do the same thing." It does
mm.
not work like that. A piece of paper versus actual individual, or even fake skin, because fake
Mm,
skin is a lot tougher than human skin.
mm,
With fake skin, the ink in the needle tends to take longer to bleed through,
mm,
versus on a actual human being.
mm,
As soon as you put that needle to the skin, that ink is in there right away.
mm.
I
Wow.
mean, it might depend on the person as well, because like if they're a big beefy person, maybe it'll take a little more to like to dab the ink in there.
Right.
But for the most part, living creatures, living beings,
Mm,
uh, yeah, our skin takes ink in a lot quicker than a piece of plastic.
mm. That's a good point. And I guess with that, do you have to, is there like a camaraderie you have to build up within the tattoo shop where you're working, or like do you have to build a relationship with the person that you're going to be working on?
I'll say it's a little bit of both. So what I'll do is I'll take an idea or image to my mentor, then I'll
Mm,
do it on FaceTime, and then I'll bring somebody in to do it on them.
mm. That's pretty cool. So then what's something that you've enjoyed in 2024? Like what's something that you were excited about or something that you really looked forward to?
Oh, one big thing that happened to me this year was being a bartender for the state fair. I
Mm,
bartended for other events previously. I got to do the first big event that I bartended for was Togetherland. It
Mm,
was Lotto, Lil Wayne, Shabuzi, a couple other popular artists. So I had a chance to get in a concert for free, pretty much.
mm,
Uh, there's other vendors there. I got to eat a lot of pretty good food.
mm,
Uh, some of the vendors were giving us food for free. I'm not gonna complain.
mm.
Um, you know, maybe I hooked them up with some shots later because they gave me food. Maybe. Uh, but it was pretty much like
Deluge you. You're good.
okay. So yeah, the first big event I did was Togetherland.
Mm,
Um, it was a good amount of money to be made there.
mm,
Some awesome performances, and then I did some other events like soccer games and some rodeos, and then finally the state fair,
mm,
which was a very awesome experience. It was a good money making opportunity, and
mm,
it was just fun to do because I'll work the morning shift, I'll get off, and I'll have a good time being at the fair.
mm,
Enjoying some of the rides, the foods, or animals or different shows that they had to offer there as well.
mm. What's the state fair like in comparison to like maybe a Virginia? Did you guys have something like that up there? Or I know everything's bigger in Texas, so I'm sure they go all out.
I don't recall ever. I don't recall. I don't even know if Virginia has a state fair.
Mm,
If they do, I never heard of it. The 12 years I was living there.
mm,
So there's definitely a lot more to do in Texas than in Virginia.
mm,
Um, like recently, I found out that like some of my places to go in Virginia are not even around anymore, or they're not popular anymore. Like the
mm,
Chesapeake Square Mall, I heard that the Chesapeake Square Mall is about to shut down.
mm.
Well, as a kid, that was a place to be. You
Right,
want to go
right.
play some girls or get some good food.
Mm,
Chesapeake Square Mall was there as that. There's also there's like this little Asian spot in the Chesapeake Square Mall. I'm not sure what specific ethnicity that there were, but
mm,
everybody loved that spot.
mm.
They talk real fast, and before you know it, you go from wanting to like pay $12 for some food to where I feel like they scale me a few times because they'll talk super fast. Like, extra chicken, yeah, extra chicken, extra fried rice, extra sauce. And, like I wouldn't hear what they're saying. I was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I'll get to the register, it'll be $40.
Oh, gee.
And I'll be like, wait, the sign says $12 right there. Like, how is this price 40? Like, well, how did we get here?
Yeah.
But it got me a few times like that. So I end up at a, after a couple of times, I learned to like just say no. Like they'll be like, yeah, or da 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 da, and I'm like, nah, nah, I'm good, nah, I'm good. Just break it straight to the register, bro.
Mhm.
But either way, their food was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a lot of malls and a lot of what would you call it? Like the outdoor malls, the plazas and things like that have shut down over time. Either like a lot of things have been replaced with Amazons and just like delivery direct to. Like there's not a whole lot of like hangout spots that people go to now.
Yeah. Um, I'll say in Texas, like I said, in Texas, there's a lot more things to get into.
Hmm.
Heck, even in being in Deep Ellum, I'll see kids that are clearly kids
Hmm.
just roaming the streets just cause, and I'll be looking like, shouldn't y'all be at home in bed getting ready for school?
Yeah,
But
right.
they not my kids, and also I've been young before too. I've been that youngster that hangs out late at night just to like see what just to get like a sneak peek of what the adult life is like.
Yeah. It's like what are they doing when the sun goes down? What's going on out here?
Right.
So then how do you what is it about being able to do multiple things or like being able to either have multiple jobs or multiple activities? Like what does that allow you to do? Like what is it about it that you appreciate versus like having a single job 9 to 5? Like you go somewhere every day, you report, you kind of do similar things, or like you're just doing like a singular thing.
So with me taking on multiple multiple trades,
Hmm.
it gives me that time just to like, meditate, pray more, try to get closer with God and really just find the right direction of things to get into. Because like I said before, boxing was great, but I ended up being around the wrong people.
Hmm.
And mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I was just in the wrong place.
Hmm.
Versus now, like I started going back to church
Hmm.
January 7th of this year,
Wow.
and I was working at a warehouse at first, and
Hmm.
I was like, man, I went from being a sponsored athlete, traveling state to state,
Hmm.
having all these adventures and making all this money to now I'm working for 18 an hour
Hmm.
and barely getting 40 hours a week. And it was just it was pretty depressing. It was miserable. Like being in those warehouses, like you're just in there with your thoughts. And
Yeah.
I said to myself, like, this could either be a time to like, look down on myself and like be sad, or I could really self-reflect by myself, have these conversations with God and see how I'm gonna move forward.
Hmm.
And uh like it says, you draw closer to God and he draws closer to you.
Right.
And I feel if you have your heart, your mind, and if you're put yourself around the right people in the right circumstances, you eventually get to where you need to be.
Hmm.
Because uh, January 7th of this year, even with me going back to church, I
Yeah.
would never imagine that I'll be here today, November 2nd, as a tattoo apprentice and um, a bartender for events,
Hmm.
and I still have my personal training clients. Like I was able to like uh branch off and venture into different things and accept like different jobs, and just kept on moving my way up and just working towards different things that I found fulfilling
Hmm.
and that I really enjoy. Because I don't think anybody that does work a 9 to 5 when they were a kid said, "Oh, I want a package mail." When I become, I don't think nobody at 6 year old said like, "Oh, when I'm adult and I'm like 25, 30 years old, I want to like, package mail, or I want to put barcodes on magazines
Hmm.
for 3 hours a week."
Right. That's a good point. I guess um how did like drawing closer to the right people or like tapping back into your faith, how did that clear things up for you?
It cleared a lot of things up. Like I said, my heart and my mind wasn't in the right place, and oftentimes I dealt with things where like I was dealing with certain people and or dealing with certain situations, and I had bad vibes and I didn't know how to address them.
Mm.
Versus now, like going back to church and like seeing how Jesus addressed different conflicts,
Hmm.
or how he said no to certain people, because and just finding out that difference between being kind and being nice. Like
Mm.
Jesus, he was very kind, but he was not very nice.
Right.
So definitely in that sense want to be more like Jesus, because in my younger days, I was just a yes person. Somebody wanted something, oh yes, I'll give it to you. Yes, I'll help you out. And
Hmm.
then when you tell people no, you get cursed out, you're a horrible person, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I look back at that stuff. I'm like, I should have never really helped these type of people out anyway. But also just learning that to just put myself first and take care of myself as well,
Mm.
because that's something I feel like I really lacked over the years as well. Just saying like, hey, how am I in the present moment? Am I
Mm.
happy? Am I sad? Or if I'm sad or angry, why am I sad or angry? Why am I sad or angry?
Hmm.
What can I do about that to change that so I can be a person that's happy and that's living in my truth?
Mm. That's a good reflection. It's like giving yourself the time to actually do that. It's like you're allowing yourself the options to make a decision that's like an informed decision because like at times I found myself kind of moving through life maybe on like autopilot or um I grew up as a preacher's kid and I've been away from church to where I hadn't really. You grew up as a preacher's kid too?
Yep.
Got you. So then I guess how was it? I am kind of curious, like what's kept you in church since January? Like what either growing up with the um like you have to do this versus like now you're getting a choice to do it, and then maybe you get past the am I being judged? Am I judging the people that I go and see there? Or like I'm here for this reason and it's a practice that I'm choosing to do, and like putting away the preconceived notions, the post-conceived notions, and just being like, okay, I'm going into this with a new mind, and I'm not coming in here to just get something and like get my to-go plate and like run out.
Uh, so beginning this year, I had to accept that everybody's relationship with God is different.
Mm,
One thing that really turned me away from going to church was, being a preacher's kid.
mm,
My father, he was a person to me, in my opinion, that wasn't a leader. He wasn't practicing what he preached. He had some ways about him that was pretty narcissistic, and it was just it was a turnoff for me. So
mm,
I figured like, okay, this guy, he doesn't live up to the things he says or tries to like. I really didn't feel like he walked the path of faith like how he preached.
mm.
So I was like, since I'm not doing it, why am I going to pretend over here to try to do it? I'm gonna try to do things my own way.
Right, right.
One big thing that the pastor of the church that I go to, he said a lot of you guys ended up here because you tried things your own way and you failed.
Mm,
He also did get what I just said previously from the pastor as well. Like everybody's relationship with God is different
right.
because you'll have different Christians that think, oh, I'm holier than you, like it's a competition or something like that,
Mm,
or think because they follow the Christian faith that it's okay to look down on others.
right, right.
That's not that's not what that's not what God is about. And that's not the right way to go about things as well. Because
Mm,
those people that look down on others, they're not living a happy life themselves. There's
right.
something wrong with them spiritually to where um, they feel like they get some type of sense of false fulfillment
Mm,
looking down on others versus if you're truly following the Christian faith, I feel like you're looking to lift up other people. You're not looking to put them down,
right,
even if they're
right.
different from you. Because Jesus, he had all kinds of people in his circle. He had killers, he had prostitutes, um, he had womanizers. He didn't look down on anybody.
Right.
He actually, I want to say that God and both Jesus took the worst of the worst and used them as examples to bring the best out of others.
Mm. Well said. I, I think with that one thing that I do on Sundays is meeting up with a group of guys where we've kind of met through our faith, and it was starting out meeting on a men's prayer line call Monday through Friday, and then a group of us started meeting up on Sundays. I think it's maybe been 5 to 7 years now. And it's been like it started out like getting up 6:30, 6 o'clock, and now maybe push it back to like 8 a.m. every Sunday morning. Maybe it'll go to like 11 or 12. But the the motivation behind it was getting your mindset right, your motivation, and working on money, like seeing money as a freedom, like something that's a tool that you allows you to um live in the world the way that you want to live, but also living by biblical principles and being able to operate correctly spiritually, emotion, I think spiritually, emotionally, I'm trying to say them in order, like the five pillars that a lot of people kind of operate with, but like spirituality matters in a good sense to where it's like you've got to know like who you are outside of like your physical body. Then mentally, you've always got to have your mind right. Emotionally, like there are things that are going to come and interact with you in a way that's not always going to be pleasant, and you've got to know how to deal with that. And then physically and financially, like those things need to also be right. So being challenged in that sense, I said all that to say that in doing some of the homeworks that we do recently, I came across this gentleman, Dr. John D. Martine, and one of the things that he talked a lot about, especially with like being in the church and being in the faith, is that if you want to become rich or if you want to live a more fulfilling life, it's a measurement of how many people you're able to serve. And one of the things I kind of had trouble with was like growing up where your parents are in the church, like they're serving the people that are in need, and you feel like you kind of get left behind. It's like a tug of war where it's like you want to have a heart for people, but at the same time, I felt kind of jaded a bit to where I'm like, okay, like a part of me either like I don't know if it's like you look down on other people or like you've kind of had certain things ingrained into you to where you're trying to do away with those, but then you try and justify not being good enough to serve somebody else. So then it's like I quickly made excuses for not doing what I was called to do and like trying to find an exit or like a way out, so to speak. So it's been it's been interesting to say the least.
I'm trying to move this camera so I'm not
Gotcha.
like.
Uh, maybe go more to your right or to your left. Right there might be good. Oh, and then just come up a little bit more. Yeah, I think that'll work. Yeah.
Okay.
But what do you think of that? Did you have any, was it an easy process for you getting over some of like the drawbacks from what kept you out before and like focusing on what it is that you needed to get out of it and bringing the best version of yourself?
Um, I'll say like, it's still a process. Like, um, just moving forward
Mm,
and going to church definitely helps, and different things that the church has advised for uh its congregation to do to like, move forward and to be happy and have better lives. Like,
mm,
getting a proper amount of rest, conjugating with close ones, close
mm.
family and friends that genuinely love and care about you unconditionally.
Right.
Um, because before, like, I would just go through life and I would just keep everything to myself,
Mm,
and I would just say, "Okay, I got it." Like, I don't need to talk to anybody.
right.
And we don't live in this world alone, so it's insane to think that you could take on the entire world just by yourself.
Right.
And then, as far as sleeping goes, like, I used to work so many hours just to like try to be financially comfortable,
Mm,
but it was draining because all I was doing was waking up, going to work,
right.
and that drove me insane for a little while. And that was really the beginning of this year. I don't think I got away from working different warehouse jobs to like probably sometime in the spring, like maybe I want to say April, March. I
Yeah.
got away from warehouse jobs and I got to different opportunities. Like, at first I was a janitor for events, but then I
Mm,
moved up to bartending for events.
mm,
And being a janitor or even working in the field as like a lawn care person,
mm,
at least I got to listen to music
mm.
and still like breathe some fresh air
Yeah.
and see like different things and festivals and things that nature go on and just really enjoy life.
Right.
Because at some point, like working those jobs did not feel like a job.
Mm,
I mean, we switched out some trash cans here and there, but most of the time we got to see people party. At the
yeah.
end of the night, we took home a bunch of food. Like,
Mm,
there was this one event called the Foodie Land,
mm,
and I guess it started in California or something like that,
yeah.
and it moved here to Texas.
Okay.
And you've seen people from all over, all kinds of cultures, come to this big food festival to just to eat. And
Mm,
lots of the foods were interesting, a lot of them were good,
mm,
and it was pretty cool to like just to try to keep the area clean.
yeah.
And at the end of the night, we took home a bunch of free food. Like the vendors were like, "Hey, we got this left over. Y'all want to take it?" Who gonna say no to some free food?
Right,
Like,
right.
and then
That's
some of
what's
the
up.
foods that, yeah, so some of the prices on those foods there were like 50 or $100 or so. At the end of the night, we just taking a plate of that stuff home for free.
Mm. I think I went to something like that up in Chicago, especially during like the summertime. You got a lot of events and a mix of cultures that come out. Like I think that was the first time I ever did like a live salsa dance where they got somebody up on the stage going through the moves and stuff like that. And you
Yeah,
probably know this about boxing, like doing footwork and things like that. Dancing is a good way to exercise and move your body. And it's like if you've never really danced before, you're working out muscles you didn't even know you had. And you're like, why am I sore? My lower back hurts, my hip hurts, this joint is over here, that's over there. And it's like, what's going on? It hurts a little bit, but I like it. I feel like I don't have two left feet anymore. I can kind of groove a little bit. And then, like you mentioned, who can turn down good food? And like you learn, oh, I didn't know that you could pair these things. I didn't know this thing existed. And that's a whole nother thing to itself.
right.
So it's, I
Uh,
mean, go ahead.
I've recently taken some salsa dance classes myself. There's this place called Fedora. It's
Mm,
in Deep Ellum. They offer salsa dance lessons every Wednesday at 8.
mm,
Um, I kind of get some of the moves, and some moves I kind of don't get. But
mm.
it's like anything. To get good at it, you just gotta keep on showing up.
Yeah, that's what's up. And I like what you said about being in community. Like when you first mentioned going back to church, I was like, yeah, there is that longing of like being a part of a community, being a part of the body. And even like when I think about it and you stop looking at what's lacking or maybe what you need, you start thinking of like, okay, what is it that I can bring or how is it that I can show up differently? And then the more you show up bringing what it is that you're seeking for, the more you get kind of like filled back up. And it's good to see people that you know and to be replenished in a way to where you kind of belong. You feel like you belong where you live and you're not like just transient. Because for me, I've moved around for the last 10 years with work, working in different cities a couple years at a time, and then going here, going there. And at times it feels like maybe I don't know if I'm going to set any roots down or like be here long term. So what's the point? But then um, places that I've enjoyed the most is like, okay, you get out, you meet people that are from the area, you try to um, learn where to be and things like that. And you make the most with what you've got. And then when you have to pick up and move, you pick up and move, but then you try and grow the courage and the heart to like do it again, put yourself out there, not be so shy and reserved to be like, oh, it's me against the world. And then it's just like, no, it's you against you.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, man. This is a pleasure talking to you, man. It's funny because it's like you meet people online or you never really know what the interactions are like, but being able to actually like sit down and have a conversation, it's very pleasant.
Likewise, I didn't know how this was gonna go. I'm not sure if I gave too much information
Hmm.
with like teenage criminal history and stuff like that. Um,
I'm sure you'll be fine.
I'm definitely a changed man, at least. But it was a joy and it was a pleasure uh, talking to you and getting to know you as well.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to link up, be a client for personal training or other opportunities down the line?
Just like follow me on Instagram at Big Bully Zero
Mm,
and just shoot me a DM and I'll later connect with them from there. Might give out my number later.
gotcha.
I'm hesitant on that part, but
I
for
mean,
the most part,
yeah. I was gonna
the,
say you
the,
can always keep it to the DM, and then if you kind of get to know him, be like, okay, you seem all right.
yeah, for the most part, the best and most solid way is just Instagram at Big Bully Zero.
Got you. And I was curious, how'd you decide on your Instagram name?
Uh, so I had a boxing coach who thought that my character was disingenuous because I would beat up people pretty badly, but then I would ask them like, "Hey, are you okay? Like, how are you?" This
Mm.
and like I'll be so friendly outside the ring, but this person that was absolutely destroying this person inside the ring, he was
Yeah.
like, "Hey, no way." He's like, "You enjoy that? You took pleasure in that? Not, I see what you're doing. You're just being a big bully." And he's
Mm.
like, "No, I'm gonna call you that, big bully."
Yeah. That's
So
funny.
I guess it's more of a play on names because I'm genuinely a nice person. I don't like to hurt people.
Mm.
Uh, we get in that ring. I'm just trying to see like uh, how's the best I can perform. Like we
Mm.
got gloves on, and also when you're in there with people that can hold their own against you,
Mm.
and it's more of a challenge. And something about that just excited me. I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure out how to tear you down.
Mm.
But like I said, there'll be times where I'll beat up people pretty badly, where their face is all bloody, or I might have put them down with a body shot, and it took me like 15, 20 minutes to get back up. And I'm like, hey, how you feeling, man? Are you all right? Because
Mm.
I'm always paranoid about like hurting people too badly.
Right, right. It's interesting because I was listening to a podcast earlier with Rampage Jackson. You still got me? But what you were saying a little bit ago just reminded me of a podcast I was listening with Quentin Rampage Jackson. It's the Jackson podcast, and he was saying that for him, he fights with honor, where he doesn't look to hurt his opponent permanently to where they can't make a living providing for themselves. So I thought that's very apropos to like not want to be a bully and kind of recognizing that within yourself and maybe like changing tactics to make sure, hey, we can get this work, but I want to make sure you're still okay.
Right, 100%.
And from the first question I asked you, are you still who you said you were?
Uh, yes, and I'm looking to be more of that person as well. I've accomplished being a tattoo apprentice this year, and hopefully, within the next year or two at most, I'm a certified tattoo artist, and still like living my best life and walking hand in hand with God.
Awesome. I look forward to your growth, and I know you will be able to accomplish that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.